Welcome to the podcast, a living library of resiliency, where we share creative conversation and mutual respect with individuals from all walks of life. If you would like to be a guest, please reach out. We are looking for inspiring stories about moments in your life, observations and outcomes from life's challenges, and tips and tricks to inspire others to understand better and accept each other. We talk a lot about art and culture, mental well-being, and the human experience. I'm your host, Rhiannon Berry. I am a painter. I use acrylic on canvas mainly, but I also dabble in artisan crafting, and I have a strong interest in mental health and am currently a university student pursuing credentials. I am a trained crisis counselor and have worked as a social worker, and I also have a background in journalism and writing, as well as hospitality and events. Currently, I am developing a program for and facilitating art and rec-based therapeutic programming, which I coordinate and lead in a variety of community organizations, as well as festivals and fairs. I am also collaborating with other wellness workers and artists for something called the Creative Wellness Haven. We offer retreats. So our next ticketed retreat is on May 8th. That's Mother's Day. It's called the Elements of Art and Nature Retreat. It's a half-day mini day retreat. And it will be held in St. Catharines from 12:30 to 4:30. There are 10 tickets available. Tickets are $70 each, and it includes a painting activity, a nature art activity, meditation and journaling circle, as well as refreshments and a gift. And you can buy tickets through the City of St. Catharines Rec and Leisure website, or visit our day retreats page at www.bwimcartloft.ca, and I'll leave that link in the description. Today's guest is Jenny Vu. This is episode 20. The journey to success from a problem child. Jenny admits that she has not always followed the rules. She dropped out of college in the first year, but went back fixated on achieving success. The journey to success continues on a long and sobering road for this graphic designer and marketing business owner. Trusting that she had taken the proper steps to position herself on a no-contest track to business success, she quickly realized that life after college is not all it's cracked up to be in the business world. She shares her volunteering experiences and interviewing burnout, and reminisces about how easy it is to get caught up in thinking the road to success would be formulaic. She recalls the parade of successful individuals presented as the status quo as long as she followed a list of surefire steps to success. She followed them with zest, but Jenny found disappointment. Her experiences as a female who is often mistaken as a male, grief from a breakup with her longtime love, COVID isolation, and volunteering burnout showed her that there is much more to consider than some strategic list. Now the cost is high for this 28-year-old as she plans a cross-country move. It hasn't always been easy to keep her head held high when success didn't arrive immediately as expected. Still, instead of allowing cognitive distortions to cloud her thinking, Jenny consciously focuses on daily gratitude and hopes this move will inspire continued momentum from her personal growth, meaningful experiences, and achievement in her new version of success.
I was thinking back to how I know you, right?
Yeah.
And I swear, I think it's the Folk Arts Festival when I was doing security. I think that was like the first time.
That was the first time.
It's so funny because like at that time everyone's like, "Oh, you want to go into law enforcement. I'm like, no, I'm doing this for fun. Technically, well, I just wanted to understand how things worked, like events and stuff, especially like large events, right?
So you had a keen interest in events over security.
I actually enjoyed the security part a lot because there's like the industry itself was there's like a stigma to it, right? Like the macho type of
Tall.
people. Yeah. Especially like I lived in Toronto when it was like when I was young, so it was like the club scene, and then like the stigma with all those security guards and all that
They're all
stuff.
like beefcakes.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what, like I want to bring compassion to this, and I was able to practice a lot of that, where it was like those areas where it's not like there's rules, but like you also have to act, with common sense.
To knock somebody's head off.
Yeah, exactly. So
a lot of those guys are like trained in some sort of fighting martial arts or something, right? Yeah. So they just look at you and they assume.
They're like, yeah, I'm not gonna mess with this person. But
that's an interesting concept. To bring a gentleness to security.
Yeah. I got to practice a lot of de-escalation, right? So that was a lot of fun. Actually, even now, like, I still use it, right? But it's not something that I like went out with the goal of learning. But you just kind of learn while you're on the job.
That's just sort of how life is for me too. I've had a funny life path. I think a lot of people have, especially like I'm 39 now, but like a lot of people in my generation. We were like, and like I kind of like call us the Sesame Street generation, because we were all like plunked in front of the TV and like watch 30 seconds of this, 12 seconds of that, this character, that character changes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's on to something else. And it's just sort of like how we are, like multiple jobs, multiple partners, multiple homes, multiple apartments, like we just like we never, like most of this generation has had like 10 jobs or more.
Some all at the same time.
Yeah. I've had like 3 or 4 jobs juggling at a time. But I think that like from that, I look at that and I think there's a reason to it all. And if you haven't found the reason that you've developed de-escalation skills in this unique way yet, it'll become so clear to you at one point. You'll be like,
good thing I learned that.
Yeah. Because even for me, like I was in events for many years in different capacities. Like when I was 17, I worked as a waitress at a inn on the top of Lake Superior.
Oh, wow.
It was like featured in Where to Eat in Canada.
Oh, cool.
So you would have people coming off the Trans-Canada Highway, and it was built in like 1884.
Wow.
So it was like super old, and my boss was like an old non-pilot, so he's a little wacky sometimes. His wife Sheila was amazing. But then you'd also get people on the yachts coming over from Michigan too. So it was like the weirdest experience, but I like fell in love with like just like the whole ambiance of like the restaurant and preparing, and bartending and serving cheesecake and just the whole thing of it, right?
Yeah.
And eventually I got into like more waitressing and bartending and banquets and bar management and all of that too. And, then, I got kind of stopped at one point, and I was in like a crossroads, and I went to a coach, like a job coach. And she said, like, if you woke up tomorrow and a miracle happened, what would you do with your life? And I said, well, no, it wasn't that. That's the miracle question in counseling. No, she asked me if I woke up and I had won like the lottery, what would I do with my life? And I said that I would take like 3 months and disappear and go shopping around the world. Nobody would hear from me. Then I'd come back. Right? Yeah. I'd come back and I'd like give money to a few different people. And then I would head over to like a third world country and start building schools. And then once it was like outfitted with the proper people, move on to the next one. And she came back and she put these like options in front of me. And one in the middle was social work. And I just went, I never considered that. But then when I got into social, it was events, it was fundraising. So all of that hospitality and restaurant work that I did just suddenly was like, oh, I got this. It makes sense now.
You had an aha moment. That's awesome.
I had lots of those.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so
wow, that's awesome.
I also ended up in a banquet hall in their accounting office part-time when they were going through like switching from paper to a software. So now I have all this accounting knowledge for small business, and that didn't make sense. I'm like, what am I doing here? But now that I have my own business, I'm like, that makes so much sense now. Like, I have that skill to pull with me into, forward.
Wow, that's awesome. Accounting is something I'm never good at.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm not good at it. I just kind of know the back end now.
I can do my like personal taxes, just transferring numbers over, and then that's the gist of it for me.
They have a course coming in I think in a week or so on how to do your business taxes.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
I'm gonna check it out too if I can attend. I'm coming.
Oh, it's in person. That's awesome. Okay.
I think you need that for anything math. Like,
especially how I learn is so crazy. I think I'm like a bad student. I always say.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. I guess it all depends on your interest too, right? Like, I've always been in business, but even throughout school, like high school and college, like I was not good at these courses. I was always more hands-on. So like during college, I would do the bare minimum in class, but then I'd like volunteer.
Oh, okay.
Right, and then
so you had different skills than the usual like academic.
Yeah, I'm not an academic person at all.
What did you take in school?
At Niagara College, I took sales and marketing, and I went back mostly just to get the paper.
Yeah.
Just get the foot in the door and network a little bit, right? In Niagara, it's so small, but I'd just come back from Toronto, so I was like, I'm not gonna do security forever, but I've always loved marketing, so I was like, let's do that. And then at some point I shifted from like corporate marketing, because that's what I thought I wanted to do, like work for like the coolest
like
paper. PR, like just like marketing and like Nike or something like that, right? But then it shifted to then creative marketing, and then I picked up like graphic design and video.
You picked it up?
Yeah, like I think it was all accidental, like the skills I've learned.
Did you learn it like on the job?
No, just when I was like probably bored. Like I remember when MySpace was a thing in school.
I had a MySpace for like a minute.
I tended to my MySpace a lot. Yeah,
I think I posted 3 times.
I don't think I posted. So like it was I don't even know how old I was. Probably like early teens when it was like really a thing, and I remember not liking any of the themes that they offered. So I was like, okay, like there's got to be a way to do it, right? So and this is one of those things that you're talking about where you learn and then you don't know that you need it till later. So I kind of taught myself like coding through YouTube and like just online forums and stuff, because I was like, I don't want this background. I want a different background. So I learned how to host an image and then HTML coded back then, because there's no CSS. But
I remember that they tried to make us do that in a course in college.
Oh, yeah?
I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what?
Coding is very interesting. It's like a language, right? But then each developer has their own way of doing it. So it's like it's like tattooing. Like tattoo artists can't pick up and finish your tattoo from somebody else. Yeah. So that's
a pity too sometimes.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I learned coding. And then that has stuck with me, just like the basic stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You were learning, you taught yourself.
It was random because I was picky with the background or the music or whatever, the fonts too. But yeah, so then I don't know when I taught myself graphic design, but I remember I just have always been able to make things pretty.
Yeah.
So like during like school, like group projects and stuff, I would always finish it off and put it into the pretty slideshow or whatever.
So you were the one who, like, they would give you like the art they wanted, the wording that they wanted, and you were the one who designed it.
Yeah. So most of the time it was like a Word doc that we all like worked on together, and then I'm like, okay, like, because I was always bad at the research part and the writing part.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, how can I contribute but not feel like I'm not doing anything?
Right, and I find this so interesting because in the preliminary questions, I said, are you a creative?
Mm-hmm.
And you said, I don't think it's like a creative per se, that I am a graphic designer. Like, I'm not sure if that's that I can call myself a creative.
I think it was artist, because the word artist to me is very, I guess it's like very traditional art, right?
Yeah.
Like the subjective, different types of mediums type of art. And like for me, when I do graphic design, I can't draw, I can't, I can trace, but like when I'm designing something, for me it's more about communication. The message and trying to make it so it's easy for the end user to get
so
that
you're more
message.
of the marketing mind, do you think?
Maybe, yeah, probably.
But I'd say you're pretty creative too if you're laying out everything. Layout and design is a big place, you know, in the history of like marketing and PR, you know, all of that. But yeah, so you taught yourself graphic design. What programs did you use?
In the very beginning, it's probably Paint, just like learning how to like use different tools for different things, and then Photoshop, and then it was Illustrator. Then when I started making like booklets and stuff like that, it was like InDesign. Yeah. I have totally boycotted Adobe though, because they've
high five.
Yes, they make
it too hard.
They've switched to that subscription model, and it's just like not, well, especially in the beginning when I first started, it's just not affordable for someone who's freelancing, right?
No.
So I use Affinity.
If my workplace wasn't prepared to pay for it and train me in it, I wasn't using it. And so whenever, like, it, even in like fundraising and stuff, right, they want to know, can you design your like posters and whatnot? And I would say I use cheap programs, flat out. Like, I do not know the ins and outs of Adobe, like in its whole form. Yeah, and I'm not really willing to learn it all.
It's a lot too, right? But
I can certainly appreciate people who have the ability, because like if I'm limited and I'm frustrated, you know, they could probably easily swoop in and be like, oh, here you go, it's done, right?
Yeah, there's been a lot of those too. It's like, I don't know how to manipulate this a certain way, but like that's why like I love YouTube. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Jump on how to.
Yeah, exactly. And like nowadays there's so many different programs. There's like Canva, and there's like a million different Canva.
I like Adobe Spark.
Adobe Spark?
It's a little cheat program, just like Photoshop Elements.
Oh, okay,
cheat.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you like, I use Affinity, so they have a suite of products too. And the best thing about them though, it's a one-time like purchase, and you get upgraded like automatically.
I'll have to look into that, because I do a lot of my own posters. I have some help, but I do get a lot of like time where I'm sitting there going, oh, I gotta put this out.
It's a great program. The controls and everything are pretty much the same. I do actually like it a little bit better. Just the way that they've organized their workspace is a lot more user friendly, I think.
So they must have asked people what they wanted.
I know a lot of designers just like online and stuff that have made the switch, because they're like, nobody likes a subscription model.
No.
So
I didn't even really know about it like until I had to use it, and then I was like, what is this?
Yeah, that's where Canva comes in.
Yeah,
I love Canva though.
I think you can make some pretty good stuff from those programs. And I think one of the reasons why, like personally, one of the reasons why I have been in situations where I'm like, this is good enough, but like a graphic designer will say it's not, is because it makes all of that learning and all that money that they've spent on all of that schooling and technology and subscriptions, it makes it sort of obsolete. If I can do something that works just as well in, you know, a half an hour on a little cheap program, they don't like to hear that. You know what I mean?
Really?
Like, it's not so great.
That's interesting. I guess I haven't. Like, I always say the freelance industry is a little lonely.
It is,
right?
Yeah.
Especially during COVID. But I don't know too many like graphic designers in the area. But
my experience comes from like putting out newsletters or things of that nature, and I just want to get stuff out. So I'm like, okay, no, that'll do. No, and then I'm like, okay, I've got to wait 4 days for them to get back to me. I'm like, I think this is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're like, no, because see that line right there, and I'm like, nobody's gonna notice the line. But that's a creative in me too,
right?
Because I don't have time for this, and I like things a little messy.
Never hurt nobody, right?
Yeah.
I do kind of see both sides. Like for me, I in business, I don't convince people. Like I'm very aware that you can sit down and do it, right? What I always say is that I can probably do it in half the time or whatever, and that's why
time is a big suck.
Yeah. So that's the only thing. But like for me, there's been times where I'm writing a proposal and the owner is like, why am I paying you to do this? I can do it. I'm like,
you go ahead and try.
You by all means, I respect that. I'm just saying that I could do it faster.
Yeah. So I see calls for artists. I see calls for art fairs. I see, people doing art workshops and whatnot all the time, and I am as well. But I wanted to get your opinion on a few different posters. And we don't have to call them out because there's no, it's only audio here. But just to tell me, if you had that contract with that information, what would you do?
I think the beautiful thing about graphic design and the creative industry in itself is that it's not regulated, right? Like how you're saying podcasts, it's not regulated or anything. There's no rules, so you can teach yourself how to do it. I think the big thing between someone who's just getting into it and someone who's been in it for some time is the fundamentals of design.
The fundamentals. So space.
Yeah, so hierarchy, contrast, space, and all those types of things that help make it more of a communication tool rather than just looking pretty is I think there's a big kind of not a big difference, but I think sometimes you can tell, right? For myself personally, I would probably left align it just because traditionally it's much easier to read. I'd probably I'd use much less text.
Yeah, there's a lot of text in the middle.
Yeah, I always too, because I'm not an academic person, when I design something that's for social media and something quick, I put I can empathize with the end user that we are scrolling, so it takes 2 seconds for them you need to capture their attention quick, right? So the use of infographics and icons,
there's 2 shout outs. This is what all the calls for artists always have, one of these megaphones on them. Or
the alert siren picture, but
so alarming.
Wherever it's bolded, you could probably put into just point form, right? Just make it quick and easier to read.
What about the colors?
Colors are.
I think they're trying to match this.
Yeah, it's tough when there is a bunch of different brandings. I'd probably use darker. Where it's gray, I'd probably use dark gray, and then where it's black, I'd probably use a dark teal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, teal and green would go well together.
Yeah, so small things like that, but it still does the job.
This one. This one is mauve and yellow.
I kind of like that one,
actually. Like that one?
Yeah. It works, right? Because purple and yellow are complementary colors, I believe. So the bright yellow, the highlighter yellow with the more pale and pastel-y purple is really nice. The contrast is great, and the colors aren't too clashy, I guess.
What about the size of the logo? What do you think of that?
for I guess for where it is, it matches, like it's proportionate. I'd probably make it a little bit smaller so then we'll not so then the text is a little bit more like
what it's about is more
yeah,
prominent.
yes, exactly. You know what I hear all the time? Make the logo bigger.
I know, everybody wants their logos like giant.
And that's just I think
this one look is like tiny.
Yeah. I think that's like a running joke in like I see a lot of memes about that.
I was going to say, you probably, because of your echo chamber, you probably see a lot more about like what not to say to a graphic designer. Like
yeah.
that,
those things are so funny. Like the recent meme from like the Oscars.
Yeah.
I think I saw one that's like the client is saying make the logo ... And graphic designers like, you know,
it's the same thing we feel about when a commission, like they send it back like 15 times, like, oh, I think I would like this yellow. It's like
it's like you chose that yellow in the first place.
Go away. I think this one is interesting because it really assumes that you know the event already.
Yeah.
Because everything's so small.
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't know,
it doesn't really tell you what it is. Lawn party edition.
Yeah, and it's just like
but usually,
night.
Yeah.
So you can see, well, here, like, you know, okay, well, it has something to do with art at night.
Oh yeah, those are moons? I thought those were the little eye emojis. Side eye
emojis. See, very like, yeah, so this is not as clear as it could be. And then this is like another one of theirs. So I find theirs to be a bit stark sometimes.
Mm-hmm. It is tough to read the two light colors.
Like especially this?
Yeah. So, but sometimes it's super hard to, like sometimes, so I do, I'm working with a lot of different companies with social media right now.
Mm-hmm.
And some provide branding guidelines, some don't.
A lot don't. Where to start, eh?
Yeah. And then some are like, here's our colors, and we want you to only use these colors, but their colors are very clashing, right? So it's like sometimes it is hard to do it, but.
Or when you partner with somebody, sometimes that's hard too. Because they have like orange and yours is teal. And
yeah, exactly.
It just gets all. What do you think of this type of thing? I find a lot of the older traditional art galleries use this style still. Yeah.
I personally
it kind of reminds me of like a church flyer, right?
But I guess I don't know why. Maybe it's because I used to do something like that, and now I look back, I'm like, I hate myself for doing that.
Yeah.
It is just like hard to, because then that's just kind of like the white square over
where everything's bleeding out of the sides. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to look at. For me, like as an artist too. Like this one's an older place. Mm-hmm. But here's one of the premium. Let me show you one of our premium festivals in the region. This one gets me every year. What do you think of that?
Wow. It's nice. I like that.
I like the purple.
Yeah, it matches really well with the image on it. And I guess too, like with posters, especially for events that are geared towards maybe an older demographic,
like an older buyer.
Yeah, it needs to be very structured, how it normally or how it is like traditionally, right? Especially if you have a lot of information, it's so hard. I've done a couple of posters where I'm like, how do you fit it all in? No, yeah. So it's one of those things.
I find it's hard for me to look at when it's that structured. When it's like a square and like these ones, like they just try to. Okay, well we've got artisans and we've got creative artists and then we've got photographers and they just want to tell you everything that they have in one poster.
Yeah.
And I almost think like one image would have done it.
Mm-hmm. Or like if it's for social, right? Like putting in the copy too. Like what I've been kind of experimenting more, especially if it's something that is a promotional post in any like industry or whatever. I'll put like a couple buzzwords on it, right? And
what
then,
are the current buzzwords?
it depends. Like if it's something for, say it's an event, for something, I would probably just put like what it is, right? Like what type of event it is, and then the date, and then now like the beautiful thing about social is you can add to the graphic more info in the caption or the copy or something, right?
Yeah, that's what I do. I load my caption and I keep my art as simple as possible now. I used to put way too much in it when I first started designing. I was just like, I gotta fit where, when, why, what, how, who, how much.
Yeah, but now even with like the tools that Instagram gives us, right, with the countdown or like the link sticker is new, which I love.
Yeah.
Before you'd have to have over 10,000 followers to be able to send a link. So now
I did not know that.
Yeah, anybody can do it now, and then people just click on it. But the caption is great because that's where you can drive traffic elsewhere, right, with links and stuff. Not on Instagram, but the other places. And then each time somebody clicks the see more or whatever, you get points. So
you get points.
You get points within like the algorithm, I guess.
Right now, I'm banned from boosting on Facebook.
Which
totally destroys me trying to promote my classes and stuff.
Is that because I know they did do like a cleanup where you need to do 2-factor authentication?
I did do that a couple of times. What it was is I interviewed somebody who did a whole show where she asked artists to paint, sculpt, whatever, her in the nude. And it was called Perceive Me. And I used one of those images on the book cover for the podcast episode. And it was like right after that. Somebody must have reported it.
Oh, boy.
And it said I went against community standards.
Do they put you on a ban for a couple months?
I have to create a new one. I've just been really lazy about it. And one of my partners has been promoting on her end instead.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, that's the only
I can
thing.
Still boost on Instagram, though.
Like, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But most of my demographic is on Facebook. Because my demographic is like 35 to 65-year-old women. They told me that. I didn't pick them. They picked me.
That's awesome.
That's what I discovered.
That's the best thing about, like, I didn't think I liked that part of social media before, but then like understanding where people are finding you and what they're looking from your content is so important, right?
It is. Like the podcast is 17 to 21-year-old boys.
Wow.
For most part.
That's awesome.
Which I was looking at, I'm like, what?
Yeah, you're like, this is accidental.
I'm
but
like,
it's
is this
kind of
because boys listen to podcasts more? Like, what's going on with this statistic? I don't know what it is, but it's very interesting.
Super, yeah.
Yeah. So.
It's kind of cool, though, because then it's like, because it's just numbers, right? Like, maybe they're looking for a little bit more
authenticity and
like a connection, right? So that's super cool.
We do talk about mental health a lot on the podcast, as well as creativity, and we tie the two together. I know I asked you a little bit about mental health in the preliminary questions, and you did say I haven't been like diagnosed or anything, but everybody has struggles. And I thought maybe I know during COVID, most of us had some sort of either like awakening or a struggle, and we came out the other end a little bit different. So you can talk about maybe your experience during COVID as just Jenny, as just regular person like the rest of us going through a global trauma together. But also like your business during that time. I imagine there wasn't an awful lot of business. During COVID?
So that's a funny thing. I think with the pandemic, a lot of small businesses especially around here, realize that they need to be online.
Yeah.
So I was kept fairly busy.
That's good,
Not
though.
gonna lie, but that's what I've heard a lot, or from a lot of like local marketing agencies and businesses and freelancers. So
So people were calling on you guys for help, just like they were all the other creatives.
yeah. So that is a cool thing, but so like I guess we'll
let's go to the start of
yeah
COVID.
Okay, so the start of COVID. It's funny because I just left a full-time job in hopes of getting another one right before like I had an interview and all this stuff, and then COVID hit and they're like, we can't take it on anymore because of like whatever, the lockdown or whatever, right? So they took a step back. I was like, oh, okay. So I mean, like most, I used the government assistance, and I was like, you know what, I'm probably not going to be able to access this ever again. So I did take advantage of that, and but I was still trying to find work on the side. It was pretty slow to start, but that because at the time it was like 2 weeks and we're done, right? That's what they were saying. So I think it was
2-week break.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was not until almost August is when I started getting inquiries about that type of stuff. But during that time, it was super stressful. Kind of banking on a pretty good position and then kind of having it end so quickly and abruptly. But
you thought you were going to have benefits and all that too.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, in the work side of things, it was a little stressful, but mental health wise, it was the first time that I actually slowed down for a couple of years since college, right? Because college is like listen to Gary Vee and like we wake up and drink coffee and wear business suits to school and do a presentation and all that stuff. So
and you were part of
it was like that hustle. Yeah, it was like
and
that hustle mentality that I like. I think I was trying to
you thought
adapt.
became normal.
Adopt to, because then you like, well, during school you hear about so many different people, in successful roles in their lives, right? So like my program, they brought in, I think the first year we heard from like 20 different people.
Right, and I bet you they didn't tell you the whole story.
No. Well, like they're all timed, but yeah, so kind of being around that, you kind of want to, like, I remember hearing like 5 steps to be successful or something, like wake up at 5 o'clock, drink a gallon of water before 8 a.m. And now I'm like, that stuff is BS because everyone's different and
everybody can tolerate different things.
Yeah. So, and like it was kind of funny because at the time I really let's talk about weed.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember seeing that as a question, but so I was I just started kind of experimenting with marijuana, but then more to help me sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, I was like, okay, like I want to be productive and all this stuff and like work. But then I'm like, but I'm smoking a J every day or something like that, right?
Right. So the whole
it was
propaganda around being a pothead.
Yeah. So then, I mean, now I'm like, I'm a productive stoner and I'm proud of it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, so it was stressful but nice at the same time because I got to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout the pandemic, I was slowly learning how to take a break.
You're being forced to.
Yeah, we were being forced to. I clean my walls.
Wow.
It's so random, but just like things I would never have been able to do if we were not in lockdown. And like there is a lot of privilege in that too, right? Being able to slow down and stuff, but and that's when I guess like calls started coming in for more help and all that. But honestly, the most transformative time during COVID for me was last year. I was going through a loss in my life of an ex-partner, just like a split. We were together for a very long time, and like COVID allowed us to kind of take a step back and realize that like we grew apart as adults. And like for me at the time, it was like my life is ending, right? Like
because your body's chemicals are screaming, come back.
Yeah, and it's like the first time I've really ever experienced grief.
Yeah,
right?
There's huge
like
grief in that. People don't talk about it, but
yeah. So for me, it was like, okay, like my mentality has always been work, 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 provide, and have fun and all that stuff. But then it's like, I took a step back and I was like, oh, like that doesn't mean anything if you're not able to spend quality time or whatever, right? So going through that loss was probably a big learning period for me. Learning, and that's when I started to learn more about myself, which is like weird. Like it's like it sucked, but it's like it felt like it needed to happen.
But you're also at that age.
Yeah.
So strange, eh? Like,
yeah. So I was able to look more into myself and then understand my emotions. Like my family is not very emotional.
I wanted to ask you a bit more. We'll get to your family.
Yeah, so not very emotional. So like last year when I started to learn, I actually I went to see a therapist about grief and learning how to unpack that on my own and all that type of stuff and trying to make it a positive experience.
Did you know that it was grief when you went to her, or did you self-label it as like depression or just struggling?
No, I think I labeled it as grief. Like I'm pretty self-aware. For the most part, I feel like up until then, during COVID and lockdown stuff, it was like I was on autopilot. So I was like living in my subconscious, if that makes sense, and not really being aware or present to my everyday life, right? Like it was like autopilot almost. Like you wake up.
You're so conscious of success.
Yeah.
Professionally.
Yeah, and like what that meant to me at the time, I don't even really remember. But yeah, so like it was crazy. It was hard, but I think, like I say, I think it's something that needed to happen. So then it would push me to be, I guess, like more myself.
Right. So who are you now?
I am more self-aware than I've ever been. And I can now kind of expect my emotions before they happen, if that makes sense. Like, I was really bad at understanding, like, anger and why I would get so worked up about certain things, like small things. So now I'm able to, before I get so worked up about maybe, like, my puppy peeing on the ground or something like that, I am able to stop and, like, understand why that is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it's because you're annoyed because now something you wanted to do has been interrupted by something that has happened, stopping you from getting to your goal.
Or, stuff like that. So, and like there was a lot of
so you're taking more time to really assess the situation.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's an everyday struggle, but
it's not easy. Anger's one of those. It comes from frustration.
Yeah, and it's a natural feeling that we have to feel, but we just have to learn how to feel it. Right? So learning how to feel it in a positive way has been like a big shift. And I've noticed, well, my puppy too, like I just got her last year. She taught me a lot of patience. So like it's kind of all happening at once.
Yep, it sounds like it.
Yeah,
big snowball effect for you.
Yeah, in like this personal development stuff, and that's not something that.
And it's not easy work.
No, it's like every day now I try to sit and reflect, and then if there's something that I notice that I've reacted in a certain way of showing like those old patterns, I immediately act on it now. Where if I need to reach out and apologize to someone and like speak from my heart, then
so you're being very honest.
I'm trying.
That's good.
Honesty's been
if you're honest, there's like a little hump, right? Like you found it. I think you probably went over the hump a few times already, but every time you do, it grinds it down a little bit, and it just becomes easier to just do that. and just being like honest and upfront and asking for help when you need it and things like that. Yeah, it's like you have to recondition your brain.
Yeah, it's a lot of learning new behaviors.
If you were flying on autopilot or in survivor mode for a long time, then it's hard work. It's repetitive work. It's reminding yourself. It's writing in a journal. It's all sorts of.
I remember when I first started on this journey, I think it was like a couple weeks after we split up, and I was like really in the midst of the grieving part, and I was reading all these books, and I was like watching, and I don't read. I haven't read a book since I. You
really slowed down, eh?
Yeah, really slowed. It was a big awakening call for me. I mean, obviously it's tragic, I guess, that it had to be in this type of way for it to show up, but I mean, better late than never.
Yes.
And still young, right? So
what were you reading?
Honestly, I don't think they're like very well known, but I remember looking at the book outlet or just Googling books about emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
So there's one called If We're So Connected, Why Do I Feel So Alone?
Yeah.
And then there's one
kind of a lot about narcissism in it.
Yeah, it was cool because that one was showing both sides. So it's like the female...
The incapability of one person to do the things the other person needs.
Yeah, I think it was written in first person of the female.
That's powerful.
First person of the female, and her partner was a male, but it's like she's unpacking it as it happens too. Like, I don't know if it's fiction or it's non-fiction, but I don't know if it's true.
Like therapy.
Yeah, that's true.
Sessions.
So it was cool to see it from her point of view, but then it also gave you insight as to why he was
unable to receive the information that she wanted him to receive or even process it.
So that was that one I honestly, like I said, I don't read. Last book I read was a Robert Munch book when I worked at Royal Flodge.
Which one was it?
My book was it Andrew's Loose Tooth? Something
that
like
that.
That
one's a good one.
I used to read that one.
My favorite one was Mortimer, be quiet.
I had a whole skit for that one. But yeah, so, and then the other one, which I actually is a really good one, is Wired to Connect. It talks about neurolinguistics and how our brain develops habits, both good and bad, and how to pretty much reprogram yourself. Yeah. So
you did a lot of self-help.
Yeah.
And then you reached out for help.
Yes, I tried. Well, I went to one session, and then it was funny because she's sitting there. She's like, so this happened, and this is what you're doing to help yourself to not have it happen again. I was like, yeah, pretty much. And she's like, I don't think you need to come anymore. So she's like, I think leave it on an as-needed basis. I was like, yeah.
It can be disappointing when you hear that from a therapist, right? Because, a lot of times you finally get up the courage to go, right? You're like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna use my benefits, or I'm gonna finally go talk to that therapist. I keep driving by that sign and seeing it, and one of these days I'm gonna go in. And you finally get to the point where you do. And unbeknownst to you, it's actually brief solution focused therapy.
Yeah.
To solve an immediate problem. But we're so conditioned from like television and movies to think of therapy as psychotherapy. These long stretches. But maybe you do need talk therapy. Maybe you do need to go and just be like, I want to talk about this forever with somebody.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you got to find the right therapist, right? But yeah, it can be disappointing when they're like, I think you're fine, considering everything you've been through. You're like, what? Yeah. I finally came in here and you're sending me out after one session?
Like, I always knew I was pretty self-aware. I just, like, I guess at that session itself was good because it allowed me to release.
Yeah.
So I like cried for
you
half of it.
finally told somebody
Yeah.
what you were feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and that was like a big thing. Back to my family history.
Yeah, so we could go back. We could go there. I did have some questions, but I didn't really know what to ask because you were very brief in your description of your family.
Yeah.
But they're Canadian Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm.
Your first generation eldest daughter.
Mm-hmm. Oldest on both sides.
Oh, of both families that came over.
Just my mom's family came over. My dad's family is still back there.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
But he came.
He came. Yep. They met here.
When did they come over? Was it after the war?
So it's interesting because they don't tell us. I've asked, but I think they're adamant on not telling us because they don't want us to know the hardships.
Probably not.
I think they came over. So my aunt came over. My youngest aunt is 10 years older than I am. She came over when she was 10. No.
Okay.
She came over when she was under 10.
Okay, wait. How old was she? Or is she now?
She's 10 years older than I am.
Okay. So after. She's definitely after.
Yeah. So I think maybe, I know it's during the war for sure. So I think they came over as refugees.
Yeah.
I know.
Are they both Vietnamese?
Yep, they're both Vietnamese. My mom's from the north, so more of like a village, jungle, rainforest type of climate and area, and my dad's from the city. So they met here, I think in high school, and I do know that they worked picking ice wine grapes. I remember my dad telling me about the amounts of gloves he had to wear, but other than that, they haven't told us much. They were really adamant on
they probably made a pact.
They wanted to raise us as Canadian Vietnamese. So not much about our history we really know of.
I get it.
We have our traditions that we follow, but they don't really.
They don't want to taint you with that big
So
because it wasn't really them either. It was something that happened to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's probably trauma that they would need to.
It's a really dark history there. Yeah. With that, and we don't know. Maybe because a lot of like middle class came over as well, but we don't know, right? Because they haven't told you. So.
Yeah, I know
that when the skilled trades came over first.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. You're not too sure. I know that when they came over, they both had to kind of pretty much start over. Right?
So your dad came alone?
I think he came with his cousins or something like that. I know he has some family scattered. But
so did they send like with his cousin and his parents or
just my maybe I think so actually.
Okay, well that's good.
So my dad's mother is back home and his sister. And then his father passed away before I was born, so... Okay. Yeah.
So that sounds like... Yeah, so he got to come over with some family that were like, we'll take you with us.
Probably, yeah.
That's nice. Mm-hmm. And then your mom, did she come alone or did she come with her parents?
She came with her entire family.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a funny joke about how, like, her side of the family, they all have 2 birthdays because when they came over, like, they didn't have any documentation, so my grandpa at the time just... I guess picked whatever dates that he could remember. So he tried to correlate them from the day to the month. So like somebody's birthday is like May 5th and like August 8th.
Oh,
like
really?
So because that's the way he could remember it, and I guess he couldn't remember like their actual birthdays at the time.
Yeah.
So now my mom makes us celebrate 2 birthdays.
That's fine. It's good.
Yeah.
You got your birthday and your unbirthday.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's awesome. So they came over, created this wonderful life. You have how many siblings?
2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how old are they?
My sister is 24 this year, and my brother is turning 15.
Okay, so pretty young. My son's 16,
yeah.
so.
Oh yeah, yeah. My brother is kind of like well, I don't think him and I were planned at all. But
Love children.
yeah. My sister and I make fun of him because we're like, you're like a second generation. Like you don't know the first generation hardships.
Yeah, because you guys probably had to go through a lot so your parents are more stable now, right? And,
Yeah.
But when you were younger, they probably had to work different jobs than they have now.
Like even before, so my mom had me when she was 18.
Wow.
So crazy. I remember turning 20 and I was like, I cannot imagine having a 2-year-old right now. But yeah, so she had me really young, and I remember she would be working a serving job down at Clifton Hill, and then I think she was going to school, and my dad was doing the ice wine grapes, and then went to dealer school for like the casino.
Yeah.
So
I always found it amazing working in settlement, like how freaking driven like newcomers are.
Crazy, yeah.
They're so driven. And then they drive their children to be, to take advantage of all the opportunities that they've been given here, created for their children. So do you ever feel pressure from your parents, or did you feel pressure to become a certain...
I think there was always that joke of my parents wanting my sister and I to be in the medical field.
Yeah.
Right? But they never actually really pressured us or pushed it on us. They were really much like, whatever you guys like to do, as long as you like to do it, and if you're making good money, then even better. If that makes sense. So
that's nice and supportive.
Yeah, it's actually, I think I was always like, they knew from the get-go I was not into medical stuff.
Yeah, because your history as a student.
Yes, and also I just have a really weak stomach.
Oh, yeah. So, I know people used to say, you should be a nurse, and I'd be like,
can't
not
do
for
it.
me.
Kudos to those who can.
So you're a member of the LGBTQ community, and in Vietnamese culture, is that something that is openly accepted, spoken about?
I think it's much easier as a female, for sure. For males, it's much different because, so for example, my sister and I took my mom's last name, Vu. My dad's last name is like very basic, like the Nguyen, Nguyen.
Yeah, everybody has that name.
Yeah,
all over, like South Asia.
Yeah, so I think at one point it's because there was like a Nguyen dynasty, and then because like everybody wanted that name, I think, because it was like a sign of royalty. I'm not sure, but yeah, so we took my mom's last name because to them there was no point in giving us my dad's last name because we weren't carrying on his last name.
Interesting.
So so in that case, like, I've gone through a pretty privileged coming out, I guess. Like, they're pretty, like, chill about it. They are young for parents, right? Like, she was 18 and he's probably early 20s when they had me. So they're pretty progressive, and, like, especially now, like, they're more comfortable and stable, but they also speak a lot more English. So, like, my little brother doesn't really know how to speak Vietnamese.
Yeah, so that's what you're talking about. It's completely different.
Yeah. So,
I can kind of understand that the segmentation of the old family and the new family, because for me, my oldest brother, I have a mixed family, a huge mixed family, but there are 11 children. My oldest brother's 13 years older than my youngest. No, more than that. My goodness, there's like a ton of years between my oldest and my youngest siblings. But overall, yeah, so there's 4 children who don't really remember all of the struggles that we went through as a family of like 8. Well, 7 or 8.
Wow.
They don't really remember. One kind of remembers a bit, but the other three aren't 100%. Like they don't understand when we carry trauma forward with us, or when we carry stories forward with us, or traditions. There is like, it's like there's two families in one sometimes. And it's just that younger.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, obviously it's like good.
Yeah, it's all obviously. Yeah, I had a friend who was like, my younger brother's living the life I should have had. It's just like, oh.
Yeah, it's because at some point they don't, like, my brother's a brat sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure, like, at some point everybody is, but...
You want the best for your kids.
Yeah, yeah. But then it's like, I find myself being, like, that cranky old lady. I'm like... You don't even know, like, you can't just ask for a gaming computer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, before we had to wait half an hour for the internet to kick in.
Yeah.
So, it's just, like, funny like that, but, I mean, I think as long as we recognize that it's, our family, the evolution of our family, but also, like, it's no fault to... them,
and that's
right?
hard sometimes, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like I just want to give you gloves so you can go pick some ice wine grapes so you can understand. But I think in time, with age and life experiences, sooner or later we all recognize it. I was a brat when I was 18. I didn't make the connection of all that type of stuff until probably like a few years ago. So
yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough because I know what you're talking about, because sometimes it's just like, oh, you guys are so privileged. Like, I just want to shake them. But yeah, like, you have to just be happy for them. You know, that they haven't had to go through all this stuff.
Exactly.
The hard times that you did. And it's the same when you have children. Like, my son is in boxing, piano lessons, goes to after school programs, he's in track and field. I don't think I would have ever had the chance to do any of those things at his age. Or, you know, some of the stuff I've done for him and taken him places. I took him to his first concert when he was 12.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we went to Green Day.
Nice.
It was awesome. We got really good.
Wow.
Yeah, we got really seats right up at the front. It was pretty cool. I just wanted to do that for him because I didn't have it, but I was able to do it.
But then you feel good, and it's like a sense of like personal pride, right? That you're able to do that.
For sure. When I was younger, because we had so many kids too, but like different factors, when we went on school trips, I always had just the right amount of money in my pocket for whatever the sheet said. And I remember we went to the circus, and everybody at the circus bought like cotton candy or elephant rides or all these different things, and I was the kid who never got any of that stuff. And it really stuck with me, watching like other parents come to the school trips and how doting and caring they were for their kids. And a couple of years ago I took him to Cirque du Soleil. And oh my god, it was such a nice moment for me. And he's just awesome. Like, this is really fun. I'm like, you have no idea, this is more for mom than you.
You're like crying. He's like, it's just an elephant, Mom.
Yeah, he's just like, oh. But yeah, he's emotionally intelligent, but at the same time, it's, you know, you want for your younger siblings, you want for the next generation, you know, but it is a little bit difficult. You want to say, go pick those grapes.
Yeah. I put this, I think I've realized that I put this weird pressure on myself where I'm like, everything bad that happens to me, I'd rather it happen to me than them.
Yeah, very parental.
I'm a little protective, I've found, where I'm like, I'd rather them just kind of cruise. Like, I've gone through... You don't
want them to have the hard time.
No, exactly. Yeah. And, like, I remember I went through a pretty big patch of just financial illiteracy where I've built up my credit again and all that type of stuff, and went through like the whole like credit card people at like Canadian Tire or like the gas station. Yeah, so that type of stuff. And I was like, honestly, like, I did it, but I'm glad that I did it. Yeah.
But you don't have to.
Yeah, so they can kind of learn from my mistakes.
I get that too as a parent, because I had no guidance going into university or college. Like, none. I didn't even think I was going to go until, like, randomly my stepmother asked me in August, are you going to go to college? And I was
Are
just
you
like,
gonna do something?
I'm like, she goes, I could go down to the school and grab you a form if you want, unless you want to go down there and see her. I'm like, yeah, no, just grab me the form. Like, I had no idea.
She was really trying to make it a point.
And I was just like, she's like, okay, but that's like my stepmom, right? So I had lived up here and I was up there for the summer working. So it wasn't really her place per se, but like she thought maybe these people down here were telling me what to do, but nobody was telling me what to do. Long story short, I took journalism and had a great experience, but didn't complete everything properly, and I had to go back later, and then I wasted money, and it just a long path for me to get into where I'm supposed to be right now, which is psychology counseling. But it took so long to get here. When I look back and I'm like, geez, if somebody had just like given me a little bit of guidance about like when to take OSAP or grants and bursaries or anything like that, just a little bit of attention. Yeah. So now with my son, I'm like, so what are you going to take to school? Deadline. You can take a year off if you're not sure. You don't want to waste that $40,000. Oh, and you could do trades. Do you want to do some creative trades, or do you want to look into another? Like I'm like on him, and I'm on his like guidance counselor. I'm like, he will not waste the money that I wasted trying to figure this out.
I dropped out of college the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I did was go shopping at the Pen. And then I dropped out right after the deadline to get your money back. And then the second time I went back, and I was like,
you gotta do it right this time.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do the school thing. I'm gonna do the volunteer thing. There's free food. I get to leave class, and there's networking opportunities.
Yeah. But you had to find your own path.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I went back for social work. I did like a fast track 10-month course, 2 years of work in 10 months. Then I did some accounting for small business, just like a quick course. Yeah, and then as soon as I finished social work, I went, I should have took psychology. I had to like go through this really winding course to get to where I am. And then, lots of precarious work in social work. And in between all those breaks, I was doing art stuff, and people started asking me for it. And then, it all sort of like melted together into, art therapy.
That's cool.
Oh, shit. Right? So that's how, it just, sometimes you have to make those mistakes. And the academic route isn't for everybody. I know what I'm learning now, I would not have been able to ingest at that early time. During COVID, I was studying like during lockdowns, I was studying like childhood trauma and like neglect and abuse, and then I had to write papers on all this stuff and read all this sorts of stuff.
That's heavy.
It was heavy, but then so I'm looking at, I'm like, in order to remember all these syndromes and symptoms and categorizations, I'm putting like moments and people's names next to these things as I'm learning it in my apartment during COVID.
That's awesome.
But I ingest it is like in me now. It's like ingrained in me. I'll never forget the material. Wow. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yo, kudos to you. That's
It was tough. I think I did 8 courses.
Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
It was crazy over 9 months.
You had to be really self-motivated, right? Because we're all at home, and I would say like majority of the population was getting assistance, so it's like nothing really pushing you.
I didn't qualify for a CERB either. Yeah, no. I had a certain situation, but I didn't qualify. And I had just gotten like contracts somewhere else that I couldn't work anymore. But then I did get some grants during COVID to run therapeutic art programming.
Wow. Yeah. And you wrote the grant thing? Okay, grant writing in itself is a skill that
it is.
It's so transferable, I've heard. I've never done it, but
you know what I always hear? Can you help me write my grant? Can you help me with the grant? And then I say, well, 4 to 6% of whatever it brings in, and I can do it. And they're like, oh no, we're looking for volunteers. A lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
So, but I've put a hard line at helping other people write grants because I did it one time, and I wrote myself into it. And then when the money came in, the other people in the organization stepped into that role.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So I put all this effort in.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's,
I have to write a hard line on that now when people ask me for volunteering or even for like consulting. Because it is a skill that you develop like a muscle.
Exactly. And
some people are really, really good at it.
Yeah. It is like, it's almost like an art in itself to be able to grant write well.
To look at what the jury wants.
Yeah.
To look at what you want to do. To look at your resources. To look at the potential for disaster on all of the different points, like people could quit, or maybe you can't get enough people to come, or this hall, won't give you a good price, and you can't get quotes for this because they want support letters, they want commitment letters. So that all needs to work like a fine-oiled machine.
Wow.
And if you don't have clout behind you, like say you're not a not-for-profit or charity and you're an individual, that's even harder.
For sure. Wow. I never actually knew what went into it.
It's a lot. I would say 25 hours, easy, first draft, second draft maybe, 24 hours for a grant that's like maybe 10 grand.
Wow.
If you're going for something like that high.
That's crazy.
For me, anyway. For me. For somebody who's done it for a long time. Like, I had somebody who did it forever. She's gotten multiple grants, like multiple.
Wow. And
I had her look over one of mine, and it took her, like, I don't know, I think she worked on it for 5 or 6 hours, just, like, adjusting my wording and stuff. Just adjusting my wording.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So when somebody asks for, like, me to write for them, I'm like, no.
Yeah. But that's something, like, you learn along the way, right? Like, the offering the help and then kind of getting burned for it.
Yeah, I did a lot of volunteering just like you. You were part of one of the youth committees that I had put together for a spell. And when we did fundraising.
I think for a brief time, because I took on too much and then I had to
you said that and I was like, I get it. Good luck.
That's when I was still in the hustle mode, and I was like,
well, you were on the women's leadership, you were on this, you were on that. Everybody who joined that committee was already committed to 15 other things.
Yeah.
And I was just like, whoa, these people are going to be our future. Like, these are our future politicians and EDs. Like, you guys were crazy that year.
Yeah, I was I don't know why I overcommitted, and I was like, it's gonna look great for like a resume, but then I was like, no.
Until you burn out.
Yep.
And then it doesn't look so great, and the reference is gone because you've burnt out and you did a crappy job or you exited badly because there wasn't anybody to say, yo.
Yeah.
Chill out.
Slow down. Yeah. I think my biggest fear is always like disappointing, or not disappointing, but I guess in a way where it's like you're not pulling your weight type thing.
Oh, you feel like your worth isn't.
Yeah, self-worth was a big thing.
Or you picture somebody else's job as more worthy than your job.
Yeah.
In the planning.
Yeah, or like not being able to deliver, I guess.
Yeah.
What's expected, right? So that's when I was like, I can't provide any great work to either organization because I'm burnt out because I was working full-time at the time and starting the freelance thing, so... But, I don't know, hard lessons, but you gotta learn them somehow.
I know, you do have to learn them. I find there's always somebody, like when you leave a volunteer position, there's always somebody else take your spot, just like a work job.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's kind of sad to me too, in a way. Like once you figure it out, hey, I'm being taken advantage of, or they're asking too much of a volunteer. When by the time you figure that out, you walk away, and it's sad because somebody else has to learn that lesson right behind you.
Yeah. And like, I think for myself, I've always tried to, like, honesty for me has always been a pillar of one of my, of like my character, I guess. And so in any capacity, when, I work with certain organizations and maybe like a friend reaches out and is like, oh, I saw this, and I'm like, well, this is my personal experience, right?
But people move around so much too.
Yeah.
In these places that ask for volunteers, that the person who was in charge of the project you worked on could have been long gone to another organization, right?
Exactly. So, I think at the end of the day, it's just learning how to play nice with everybody.
I think it's about power. A lot of the time, it's about you're there to get experience, but that person's there to prove themselves. And I find students, like, a lot of times, like EDs, in some of these organizations that look for volunteers regularly, like, I've heard it a lot, like, oh, there's nowhere else for me to go, I can't go any higher or whatever, because there's like a cap on the boards put a cap on how much they could be paid or whatever, right? But I've heard it so many times, and people just forget, when they didn't have a job, and then they always want more. It's like that. I want more money, more abundance, power, more admiration, more. These awards are always handing out. So I think they're there for that reason, but on a larger scale too. Same reason you're there, to build their resume and make themselves look good. And a lot of the times that's when things go sour.
Yeah, I've shifted my mindset with volunteering now to really only volunteering when it sets my soul on fire, I guess.
That's a good reason.
Like, I guess I'm at the point, and this comes with, like, age and work experience in general, right? But I'm at the point where I don't really want to sit on a board just to sit on a board. Like, I want to actually do something and make an impact.
Yeah, there's working boards, and then there's sitting boards, and then there's working boards that overwork you, and then
yeah, exactly. So
like, you never know what you're getting into, because they're always super nice when you first say I want to volunteer.
Yeah, exactly. So just finding those types of organizations or causes, or even like one-off events that I can help with is important.
Well, one of the things I learned how to do is budget in my business plan how many paintings I'm going to give away for free, and how much of my time, percentage-wise, volunteering as a therapeutic art leader or workshop leader or whatever. And then I slap myself on my hand if I go over. But at least I have something that says, okay, you're going too far now. This is too much. You told yourself at the beginning of the year that you weren't going to do more than this, because then it meant, that you're getting taken advantage of, or it's cutting into the profits you're trying to make as a small businesswoman. So you have to say no at that point. It's very rigid, but
that's awesome. It's kind of like, I guess in more crazy terms, but like an audit for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So that's.
Yeah, I had to do it. I was giving away too much for free. Too much skill, expertise.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Like the first 2 years of freelance, I was charging myself very little. Just so,
and same with art. Like, how do you? How do you price art? Well, I was at a fair like this weekend, and somebody said, "How much is that piece?" I went $500. Now I'm just like, I don't care anymore. I'm pricing my art how I think, and that comes with being burnt so many times too. But I'm pricing it, the time, the effort. People say don't attach an emotional attachment. Screw that.
Yeah,
I'm attaching an emotional amount. To this art.
It's your hard work into it, right?
Yeah.
So.
And then beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So if you price it at like $40, they're gonna value it at $40. If you price it at $150, they're gonna value it at $150. And you don't know how much people have in their pockets. You don't know if they're out looking for that. Like, if somebody comes to you and they say, I need this job done, but I don't have a budget. Like,
oh my gosh. I hear it often.
Yeah.
And it's a scary thing for me. For myself, I have stopped quoting people on the spot.
Yeah.
Like, when
let me get back to you with the proposal.
Because like when I first started, it was like you say yes to everyone because you want the work, and then you are scared of them saying no, so you just say whatever.
Yeah.
Right? But now, like, I'm able to and congratulations to yourself. I feel like we're in the same like boat.
We're like
here.
tired of this.
Yeah, we're done with this, or we're gonna charge what we are worth, and it's a beautiful thing the first time you hear yes, right?
To the amount that you value yourself at. Yes.
So the first time you hear yes, it's like your worth and your time and your effort and energy is being validated, right? I don't know if I still have it. I photocopied my first ever check.
Nice.
And it was for, I think, like $100, and that was for like 10 hours of work. But well, I moved, right? So I think I lost it, but I kept it on my desk because I was like,
it's a reminder.
It's a reminder, right? Because I knew at the beginning that I wasn't going to make a lot of money right from the get-go. It's a lot of learning and a lot of yeses and nos. It's sales at the end of the day.
There's strategic partnerships too that when you know,
yeah,
it's good to undercharge sometimes if it's a strategic way of
for sure.
getting in somewhere or learning something.
Yeah. What I've been experimenting around with is, I guess like the best example, so I'm moving, right? So I really wanted to, for the month of May, we were going to just travel across Alberta and BC.
Sweet.
And camp. And I have a Wi-Fi hotspot so I can still work and everything. But I was like, I really want to build one of those bed platforms, right? It has like drawers for space and like you can fold up and drive during the day and all this stuff. And it'd be a nice, comfortable, I think it's like a full or double-sized bed in your car. So I wanted to build that, but I was like, I don't have time, like, or the expertise, right? So I reached out to a friend I went to college with. I know he's in like construction or carpentry or something, and I just threw it out there. I was like, hey, like, I remember you reaching out. You need a website. I can help you with that if you're open to doing like a service trade, like. And randomly, he's like, yeah, I would love to talk more about that.
Yeah,
so
that's sweet.
It worked out. I'm helping him with like a logo and a website, and we actually installed it last week. So
you look really happy about it.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I geek out on this.
Oh my god, you're gonna be by the lake, laying in bed.
Yeah, so
boho.
Yeah, there's drawers. It's super cool, and I think they use like recycled cabinets because his father does custom cabinetry. So I'm like, I love trying to be sustainable. Yeah, it's green. I'm excited.
I'm jealous. I'll be honest. I'm super jealous.
It's bittersweet for sure.
Yeah.
First time I left Niagara, I was
love road trips though.
Yeah.
So fun.
This time it's gonna be a little bit harder, but
yeah, you're leaving. You're gonna be grieving again.
Yeah. This time, well, the first time I moved, I wasn't as close with my family. So this time, like, everything's chill and all this stuff, so it's a little bit harder. But it's one of those things where, like, I'm a big believer in kind of living away from where you grew up for at least like a year or two, just to experience different things, right? Like, I grew up very sheltered on like a tree-lined street with seniors everywhere. So
I want to go out and experience life a little bit.
Yeah, I want to experience more, I guess, like, negativity, but also like try
the gritty stuff.
Yeah, the gritty stuff.
And you want to see if you can survive.
Yeah. Right. Like, I want to
challenge yourself.
Yeah. So I've survived the financial thing in my life, but it's, I guess, like going to a whole new place and not knowing
minimalism.
Yeah.
Going to a new town is very, very crazy. It's very. it's a learning experience because it is hard, like just being a newcomer to a new town.
For sure.
But it's adventurous and it can be really fun. I loved like finding coffee shops and stuff like that.
I think one of the things that, so for myself to keep myself grounded, I usually try and live every day grateful. Is something that I like have really tried to like ingrain in myself, because so a million things could happen during the day where it could stress us out, like too many meetings is annoying, all that stuff. But then I'm like, I look at things where like international students coming to Niagara College or something, I always took interest in them, because any international student I talked to in Niagara College, but the first thing I'd say was, why Niagara College, right? Like, what is it about this place? Most of the time it's because the visa thing was faster or easier, but then I'd always ask about their experience because it helps put into perspective for me, right? Like, as a first generation Canadian growing up, I think very privileged, they're like, I couldn't even imagine leaving my entire family at, some of them are 17, 18, right? And then going to a whole new place, you don't really know the language.
There's
or,
like a youth.
like, you can't drive.
Yeah,
right?
a lot
So,
of youth are sent still just by themselves because their families think they'll get here and it'll be fine.
Yeah, and like at the end of the day, too, those families, some of those families could be saving pennies. And stuff. Like my dad's sister, back home, like they're comfortable now, but like back probably even like 5 years ago, they sent their oldest daughter to the States for school. We're not very close.
They think it's the best thing.
But they were pinching pennies to
they're going by them, like, they're and then you have that pressure, be a doctor or be a on top of it, right? So I wanted to talk about something I saw on your Facebook, and that's why I reached out to you. I was like, come on the podcast. You're moving, right? So, and one of the things that you kind of wrote in your announcement that you were leaving is, you had some challenges finding jobs, or not finding jobs, but like in job interviews, you were noticing that people were judging you and I'm thinking this is probably Niagara region, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then you say now you put your picture on your resume. So do you want to like just share that story and walk through the experience of the interview, maybe?
Sure,
so that we can...
It's funny too because I have a lot of friends in HR and they're always like, why do you put your picture on there? I'm like, I just don't want to waste my time or anybody else's time, right? So I remember, this is after college, just looking for those big kid jobs within business and all that stuff. And like I thought it was going to be easy because of all the volunteering I did, right? Like I racked up over 500 hours and I met so many community leaders and all that stuff. So I was like, okay, I've made the personal connection with them. It should be somewhat okay. Like they might remember me. And some of them did, but sometimes, like when you go into an interview, you can kind of tell the vibe, right? Like you can tell when you walk in, the secretary or receptionist is like, hi, I'm like, oh, I have an interview at this time, and they're like, for Jenny? And I'm like, yep. And like I have never not lived authentically. I'm always like, or sometimes they'll be like, Johnny? I'm like, nope, it's Jenny.
So they try to correct you, but
yeah.
And what's the expression on their face?
Well, first they're confused, but then you can kind of see that they regret it. I would say 9 times out of 10 regret it, or like are feeling uncomfortable, awkward, like, oops, I just like dug my own hole type thing.
Yeah, without thinking what was coming out of my mouth.
And like for me, I've always been very easygoing. Like I get misgendered all the time, right? But for me, it's like, it kind of comes with the territory. And I know it's kind of weird to say because it shouldn't matter, but I'm like, I kind of knew that because society, right? Like short hair is like boy haircuts, and that's what, and like even within my own family, all my cousins are under like 10 years old. They just see no hair, but they call me Jenny, but they use masculine pronouns.
So what pronouns do you prefer, or do you have a preference?
I like identify as like she, hers, but like I don't, it doesn't really matter to me. Like,
to me, like not that I'm in the same boat, but it doesn't matter to me either.
Yeah, I think for me the big thing is intention.
Yeah,
right.
That's what matters.
I've always said that, where, like I remember going to the restroom at a restaurant in Toronto, and the security guard came up to me. He's like, "Hey," and then I turned around and I was like, "Yes," and he's like, "I'm so sorry." Like, I'm like, "It's okay. Like, you're seeing me from behind. It makes sense." So the intention behind it is what matters most. Like, if somebody knows that you know, like you identify a certain way, and they're gonna create a problem, like that's different than
Did you find that in HR at all, or?
Not really, no. Like,
just the initial awkwardness.
Yeah, like a lot of it was unintentional. There's been clients where they would slip up and use the wrong pronouns,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's not. But like people always try to catch themselves,
Yeah.
right? So I try not to be too sensitive about it, and
Yeah.
it's never been something that bugged me. And to be honest, doing security sometimes it's better.
It's better to be thought of as a man.
Yeah.
I had one artist that was part of some of the programming that I was running, and I kept messing up because they wanted to be called they.
Right.
But I kept saying he, and I was just like,
yeah.
okay, I'm gonna get it one of these days. I'm so sorry. Like during the Zoom meetings, I'm just like, oh
Yeah.
God, I did it again. But it's
It is an adjustment. I know. I mean, firsthand. So, like, my partner now, like, one of their friends, recently is kind of expressing themselves in a different way, just using they them pronouns as well, and it is an adjustment because it's like you have known someone for so long, or
you just automatically
it kind of rolls off the tongue. But I think that's where folks within the community can
he
practice,
always
like,
reminded me.
Yeah, it's
Which
like,
was nice. He's like, they. Okay, they. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think folks in the community can practice like patience too with everyone, right? Like, none of it's, as long as it's not in a negative intention or it's meant to hurt you, like, I think it's a little bit more easy to be lenient. But yeah, I don't know, like, just during the work search, you can kind of tell. So then I was like, you know what, like,
people are like, this isn't what I bargained for or something.
Yeah, exactly. So
thought I was getting a Jenny.
Yeah, I know, not a Johnny. But then I was like, you know what, to save myself time and also them time, because to me, I was like, I was really discouraged at one point. I was like, this is so wrong. Like, I was like hurt by it, right? I was like, this is not how.
You don't want to repeat it over and over and over
Yeah,
again.
exactly. So I was like,
and then not get the job.
Yeah, exactly. And finding a job is time commitment now.
Yeah.
Right? There's like so many different interviews and like all this stuff. But at some point I just shifted and I was like, you know what? I'm going to put my picture on there. And if they don't call me, then that's fine.
Then you save time.
Then I save time. I don't want to work for someone like that anyways, right? So it's, I don't know how I shifted my mindset. Because at one point I was very victim mentality at certain things. But then I realized, like, that's nothing I can change. It's not my job to change.
Right.
Right? Like, their mindset or their outlook on...
Or if you, like, come in and you sit down on the couch.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, that's...
Yeah.
Type.
Yeah.
She's not here yet.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I don't know. At some point, it's putting, I guess...
it can be like, you're just like, oh, man, come on.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we all need to live by the exact same rules. And the same is true if the HR person is like adamantly against pictures on resumes. You don't want to work there anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, like, in my field, I guess, too, like, it's a little bit more common for pictures. And like,
same like on my art resume, I put stuff on there.
Yeah, right? Like, you change it to different colors. It's not just on Word. I personally can't stand Word, like resumes, but
antiquated.
Yeah. So, but
I get what you're saying a little bit because my name is Rhiannon, but a lot of people glance at it and they think it's Ryan, or my name is Rhiannon Barry. So a lot of times I get Barry because people are afraid to pronounce the first name. I guess I don't know, but yeah, they're like, that can't be your first name, and they think like I'm Barry. A Barry. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, it's perception, right? And it's interesting to see people's perception for sure. I always try and empathize, so that's what's kept me a little bit sane.
Yeah, it's hard, right? I had a job where I was like I was helping foster care kids. Sort of like I'd spend like 4 hours with them once a week. I had like my kids. I'd go pick them up and do stuff. On this one kid, we were all sitting around. We had his like annual meeting or whatever. So his foster father was there and his caseworker and stuff. And I was just like sitting there listening in really because I was like the last person on the totem pole really. Like I was like the person who helped him get his prom clothes or right. And they were like, is there anything else that you'd like to do? He's like, I really want to go to Pride. And I looked at him, and everybody's like, oh, I said, I'll take him. I want to go to Pride. I want to go to Pride. That's a party. I'll take him. And it was just like, they were just so like weird about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was like, we're going. Yeah. We're going, buddy, if that's what you want to do. But yeah, the reaction was strange.
Yeah, and like, I don't know. For my parents, it was a little tough at first. But then, I don't know, maybe it's like their age where they're a little bit more progressive. It probably is. But like I think in general it's much harder for men that come out.
He was really angry a lot. Like, we went there and there were protesters, and I had to like literally like pull him back. I was like, no, let's just go buy an umbrella or something. Like,
well, yeah,
let's get out of here.
Yeah, it's not a choice, right? So there shouldn't be a protest about
Somebody
it.
was protesting, and he just had the opportunity to let it out, and he let it out on the guy. Oh. Yeah.
Good.
So I watched, and I was like horrified. I'm like, oh no.
You're like, is he gonna fight somebody?
I'm like, I gotta get him out of here.
Wow. I mean, yeah.
We walked around, we got out of my car, walked around the corner, and there were like wangs everywhere.
Wow.
And I was just like,
yeah,
let's get out of this part.
That was my first time too.
We gotta go to the like parade part. Like, we could get out of this. I don't know where I parked, but this is good.
I love Pride. I'm excited to experience Vancouver Pride.
Yeah,
I've been to Pride almost every year for the last 10 years, and it's usually the same thing now.
Yeah,
the celebration continues, and it's funny because you hear some folks saying, why, like, everyone is gay, like, why do you guys need a parade? And it's like,
well, let's have
a
straight parade.
Yeah. It's like, it's not true. Like, there's still things that we're fighting for, right? Like, just basic human rights for everyone, not just in Canada, but in the States there's still a lot of
wider it's a larger conversation.
It's a small part of a big puzzle.
Well, there's also, you're right, like in other parts of the world people are just like imprisoned for being gay.
Yeah, which is crazy. So that's why, like, when I look back at things, I'm like, no matter what, I'm still very privileged.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people don't have the same mindset, right? Is because like that job search was probably one of the hardest things.
It can get you down, like it can turn you bitter.
Yeah, and it brings down like your self-worth,
especially since you put so much effort into volunteering and building who Jenny is in the community.
Yeah So it was tough, but like
to experience prejudice like that.
And I also recognize that like there's got to be something that I could do to help the next generation of LGBT kids in business, because like I said, not everyone might have the same mindset or
the strength to not go down that wrong path of resentment and bitterness, which really ends up rotting you from the inside out.
Exactly, right? So I mean, I'm sure I felt it at some point, but
how could you not?
Yeah. So
when there's nothing about you that you could change to make them change their mind, right? Like, you are who you are. You can't change how you look, how you behave, who you're attracted to.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're basing their decision on things that have nothing to do with your skills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now it's the picture's there, and I mean it's a little old, so I've aged a little bit than my headshot, but it's I think it gets the point across. But I think nowadays with younger folks starting businesses and with the internet, like there's like 18, 20-year-olds making so much money, and they're hiring folks within community because they don't care. Right. You know what I mean? Like with those more modern...
next generation doesn't care.
Yeah.
My son, like when he comes and tells me, he's like, there's like so many people at my school, I'm just not sure what to call them. I can't remember what everybody, because they have so much freedom to just be themselves within the school.
Yeah, that's crazy. That was one of like the biggest like factors of staying, I guess, closeted. Right? Is high school.
Yeah, that's crazy. Isn't it crazy now? Like he goes to Dungeons and Dragons and he comes back and he tells me, he's like, so they like he knows a few, but there's like so many. He's like basically there's 7 people and I'm not sure what to call them. He knows
so
a few, but like the rest of them, he's like, oh, I teeter on the edge of what to call them, or I avoid it, or I try to figure out what their name is because I just don't know, because everybody has pronouns now.
Yeah. That's good though, right? Like that just means that as a whole, things are shifting.
Oh, it's shifted.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And, well, in his school, in his previous school too, but I think like also the teachers are being trained in certain ways, right? And it's mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
It's mandatory. You can't say this. You can say this. You have to take this training.
Yeah. Well, those kids spend so much time at school, so that's kind of like the building blocks of their how they see themselves too.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, I can think back to when I was in high school. Like, I didn't really come out, not because I was scared, but I just wasn't sure.
I don't want to bother either.
I wasn't. I literally went to in high school. I just went to school and I went to work. That's what I was more focused on. I didn't like the partying. I didn't like idols.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's strange. Like I think like my sister and I are both like that, where we didn't really enjoy the partying, and we just didn't really care. But I mean, when I did come out right after high school, all my friends were like, "Yeah, like we know." I'm like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah.
But I didn't cut my hair until after high school either. So
okay,
started in small chunks.
How long was your hair before?
Down to my butt.
Really?
Pretty much, yeah. But it was always in a ponytail, and like my mom would do my nails. Like they own a nail shop, but she would want to do our nails, and my sister's like really into it with the flowers. And I'm like, can you make basketballs on my hands?
She's like, oh.
She's like,
oh, this is not what we do here. We do gemstones.
Yeah. And I'm like, you wanted me to get my nails done, so.
Yeah, I'll meet you halfway.
Yeah, exactly. So.
That's awesome. We've gone through quite a bit today. We've chatted quite a bit. Is there any questions that you have for me? It's not going down.
What does art mean to you? I always like to ask in what I think is a real artist.
Well, thank you for thinking of me in that classification. Art is such a big concept. I think that if you look at an evolutionary perspective, we are all artists. I think it's basic human instinct to communicate. I think from like early cave drawings, I think when you go and you look at art, the feeling that it invokes is an evolutionary thing. So when people say to me they're not artists or they're not creative when they come to one of my painting classes, I say that's not true. Somebody told you that along the way, or you got that idea somewhere. But I think it's as much a part of being human as breathing and eating, getting angry, having babies. Yeah, that's what I think. And I don't think incredibly highly of the stuff that I produce, but I know some people find it enticing and attractive and encouraging, so that's what keeps me creating it.
Wow, that's very interesting. I've never for me, like, I've gone to museums and like all that type of stuff, but I haven't felt that yet. Like, I felt it through some photographs.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm able to.
You need to put yourself in the right mind frame. Yeah. Now you might be more ready. Yeah. So for me, one of the things that I do in my retreats is I base a lot of the programming off of cognitive restoration theory, which has to do with everyday distractions and stress. So, for instance, the next retreat we're going to make a large-scale organic meditation labyrinth. We're going to forage with the group in the forest, and we're all going to come back and build this labyrinth together. And so basically, the meditation involves talking about urban living. So when you live in an urban environment, you just have all these stressors and all these pulls at your attention constantly. You know, pollution, sound. You get used to them over time, but it doesn't mean you're still in an unnatural environment for human beings. And so when you sit in the woods and you go through all these different levels to hit purification, where you can really embrace that evolutionary part of yourself again, and it leads to a regeneration of a rejuvenation, so of energies that you've lost because of urban living, right? So forest bathing, that's where it sort of comes from. I think it's a Japanese style of forest bathing. So I walk people through that in the meditation. And then I also give them facts about urban living and how the earth is sort of crying out for people, and people are crying out to the earth as well. And it's, you know, let's strip it right down, take away the facades of urban living. And so the feeling that you get sitting in the woods and that rejuvenation, according to studies, is the same feeling that you can get from watching children play or looking at a great piece of art.
Oh, wow.
So it's an evolutionary thing.
Okay.
And those are the things that take you out of that stress and naturally revitalize you.
Okay. That's amazing. You know what's funny? I forgot to mention this earlier. But last year when I was going through the grief and doing the reading and everything, so I was a bad employee at the time and bad freelancer, whatever, because I would do the very bare minimum that I needed to get through the day, whether that be my day job or like my actual freelance stuff.
And survive.
To survive, and then I would leave. Like, my puppy and I would go. We pretty much lived at Port Dalhousie Pier last year.
Water therapy, yeah. Green or blue space works.
Yeah, just sitting there. I opened the tailgate and we would just sit there, and sometimes I'd do work if I was feeling inspired. Most of the time I was sitting there reading or just like smoking a joint and reflecting. Not too often, because I found that the joint sometimes like masks what I'm feeling.
Right.
If that makes sense. So, but like almost every day, my mom would call and be like, "Where are you?" And be like, "I'm at the beach. I'm just, like," and then that's when I started to go hiking more. And
you were reconnecting, and you were getting all those good ions off the water. I don't know how many good ions are in Lake Ontario, but that's another story.
We're trying. We're making do. It's either that or Niagara Falls.
Yeah. That's too touristy.
Yeah.
Ever seen pictures of Niagara Falls before they built all that crap around it? Like, that must have been some freaking sight to see.
I think I have like those old black and white pictures of
like with no
sidewalk.
No sidewalks. Can you imagine being like an indigenous person and that's like on your route to somewhere and you just get to walk by that?
Yeah.
And now it's like
tourist city.
Freaking lights everywhere and craziness. Anyway, I often think about that. People are like so weird about, like, people who are from Niagara Falls are like, "Oh, I love being by the falls. I love the water," and things like that. And I'm just like, ugh, they've ruined it.
Yeah. I know. I always, it's funny because when I have like visitors and they're like, "Do you want to go to the falls or do you go there a lot?" I'm like, "I haven't been there in years. I don't go down
It's
there."
around the corner, but I went there during COVID when it was like dead.
Oh,
a couple
nice.
times. That was cool. But then people just kept coming anyway, even though they weren't supposed to.
Yeah, I remember that.
Somebody told me that the rainbow is a hologram.
I don't think
I still
so.
have to look into that, but somebody told me that. I might be spreading false information.
I would think it's pretty easy for the rainbow to form on a nice day because of the mist. It's always misting.
I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that now.
I'm not smart in that.
Don't know how rainbows are formed.
Yeah. You would think I would know. But yeah, so getting outside has been crazy good for my mental health. Just reconnecting with nature. And it's funny because I tell my partner now, we try to go hiking at least once a week.
Yeah.
But I was like, you wouldn't even believe who I am now from my childhood, because I remember...
It's better to go alone.
Yeah? I have been alone a few times.
You get more benefits out of it alone.
With my puppy?
With your puppy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. You're like, I don't
we don't
need
need
my
the other
puppy.
person. Yeah.
No, but you can go with friends, but if you just, like, I used to go sit and paint in the woods.
Wow.
Can't do that with somebody else. They want to go or they want to chat.
Yeah, true.
I get a lot out of it just being by myself.
I like going on, sometimes like the trails and stuff, they're too busy too, right? So,
Well, they have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody went back to nature. See, isn't that another clue that like everybody went
Yeah.
back into the woods, like when we were like
on
you know,
lockdown and stuff.
on lockdown, but like how we were like, you know, thousands of years ago, you know, when we were hunter-gatherers.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was in the woods all around the globe. There's this other study that I read that they simulated the sound of bird calls and the smell of the forest in a lab, and then they tested people's cortisol levels and stuff in their saliva, and basically they found that if the bird calls were native to where you grew up, it reduced your stress level that much more, or your ancestry.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder
there's a
what
lot to
birds
it.
I should listen to.
Yeah.
I saw my
You're gonna have
first
to ask your parents.
woodpecker.
Yeah. There was a woodpecker outside my house a couple days ago.
Super cool. Yeah, so.
But yeah, so there's so much more to nature, and I'll send you a link to like the structure, because sometimes when you have like the structure behind it, you're like, oh, because there's like different steps, right? And not that you have to do them. It's just like, first this is what happens to your blood pressure and your mind and your body, and then this starts to happen, and then this starts to happen, and then this starts to happen, and this is what happens when you hit like that final stage when you're coming out, and you can almost recognize it in your mood, in your thinking patterns.
Yeah, I would love to read into it and then like kind of be aware as it's happening.
Yeah,
I love
it
that.
puts it in a different perspective, because you know what's happening already.
Yeah.
It's like when people come to an art class and they're like, or when people advertise their art classes and they're like, it's therapeutic. And what they're talking about is the residual effects of arts participation. And a lot of my programming, I intentionally design with theories and methods that have been proven. So I'm not relying on residual effects, because like I know what's actually going to be happening to you.
That's
So
crazy.
I strengthen it at those points.
Can you see it click in your participants?
I can see it click sometimes.
Wow, that's crazy.
I can see resistance too.
Oh yeah.
I can see people get very angry sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But that's when I
pretty
put my
cool,
hands
though.
on their shoulders usually.
Yeah.
And I go, may I take your brush? Can I show you something? Please fix it. I can't fix this. It's ruined.
That's me.